Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for clicking on today's video. I'm excited to bring you my formal long-form 30-minute plus Udyr guide. We're going to structure this video into 3 sections: the good, the bad, and the ugly. All right, the good's going to be Tank Udyr, the bad's going to be Tiger Udyr, and the ugly is going to be full AP Udyr. In that order, that is your carry potential on Udyr. If you don't know, there are many ways to play Udyr. Also, a little bit about myself. My name is Willie P. If you don't know, I've climbed to Challenger many times on Udyr in the past. This last split, what my current rank is give or take 200 to 600 LP, Masters to Grandmasters. On the North American server, I have played all 3 playstyles to Grandmasters MMR, Tank, AP, and Tiger. I am very familiar with all 3 playstyles, which is why I'm excited to finally be making this video, because after 1,000, 2,000 games on Udyr, I feel very comfortable and competent and capable of making this video now. Once again, there's going to be 3 parts: the good, bad, and ugly. Feel free to skip to the part that matters to you. We're going to go through first Tank Udyr, second Tiger Udyr, third AP Udyr. In that order is both difficulty and carry potential. Meaning Tank Udyr is your most consistent at a kind of a 60% win rate, but it also will never really push 90% win rate unless you just get lucky with teams. If you play full AP Udyr, you can push 90% win rates just because you'll be carrying, but it is also the least consistent, which is why we're doing the good, the bad, and the ugly. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in.
Dang. Call me so I can make it juicy for you.
Hey guys, I wanted to mention real quick, if you are new to Udyr and you're also looking for information on how to clear your jungle faster, I decided instead of putting that in this video, I have a dedicated video. I'll make sure to leave a card on the top left or right here that'll take you to it. It's called the Advanced Clearing Guide for Udyr. I tend to do Raptor starts if you want help, in addition with how to actually use the champion with, you know, that 1-2 auto attack cycle to get your passive cooldown lower. I have tons of gameplay. I'll make sure to put gameplay, of course, in this video for you, but I did want to mention coming out of the gates here, if you want help with clearing your jungle faster to get below 315 or so, make sure to go watch that video, because all that information is in a condensed video for you to use. And then also, if you want help actually seeing how to play the champion on more of a auto attack by auto attack basis, I have tons. I've got an Unranked to Masters series. I would suggest go watching that, because you'll see some live commentary on that series where it should help you more as a newer player, instead of me just trying to say do this, do that in a 30-minute guide. I think watching the gameplay will be your best source of information, so I wanted to mention that up front. Without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into the actual guide and the material itself. All right, let's go ahead and jump into Tank Udyr. Let's start with runes. Runes are very, very simple. You have a ton of options. Of course, on Udyr, a lot of people ask me, and I want to open with this. With Tank Udyr, I think you only have one good rune page, in my opinion, because it is hard outperforming everything, at least at point of making this video. The best rune page by far and away for Tank Udyr is Conquer, Triumph, Legend, Haste, with Last Stand, as well as Magical Boots and Approach Velocity from the Inspiration Tree. We're going to pick up double Adaptive Force and the minor runes, as well as Scaling Health. Keep in mind with all forms of Udyr, and I do want to open the guide by saying this, Udyr is a late game hyper scaling champion. Think of Udyr kind of like Kassadin, except melee mode, and you're tanky and you have a ton of utility. The reason why this rune page works so well on Tank Udyr, and why I recommend, honestly, you should take this into 100% of teams, is because A, Conqueror works really well on sustain DPS champions. Specifically as Tank Udyr, you don't really die, so you get to stay in the fight a very long time, and it helps you get bonus damage and healing on top of that. Triumph is incredible because it restores a percentage of your bonus health. If you're stacking a bunch of health because you're building tank on Udyr, Triumph has a ton of value and it restores health. Legend Haste is great for the cooldown because you'll be cycling your Turtle Shield, your W ability very often, so Ability Haste helps you with that. And then, of course, Last Stand if you have a very high health pool. And a lot of sustain, the lower health you are, the more threatening you become, which is a very nice spot to be in as Udyr, especially if you have Conqueror stacked and you've got a lot of tank items. The reason why we take Magical Boots and Approach Velocity in the secondary tree, if you don't know, is because Approach Velocity actually gives you a 15% movement speed towards anybody affected by your R. So your R circle, if you slow anybody with your R circle, that will trigger Approach Velocity, and you get to run closer to that champion at 15% bonus movement speed. It also works if your teammates happen to land crowd control effects on the enemy team. Magical boots are great because they're just 300 free gold. They're faster than the other boots. They just give you 10 bonus movement speed, and it's a tempo thing. The more early game kills and takedowns you get, the earlier you get your boots. You don't have to waste gold on boots. You spend your gold on damage and Dark Seal instead, and you snowball extremely well. And then, of course, the double adaptive force helps you clear your jungle as fast as possible, and the scaling health works really well with Conqueror and Last Stand. As Tank Udyr, this is going to be your rune page pretty much 100% of the time right now. For tank matchups, I usually just put up a visual. I think most people just prefer to pause the video. You can snipping tool this, share this, do whatever you got to do, come back to the video in the future. But this is my guide for Tank Udyr. There are only a handful of champions that you can't play Tank Udyr into, in my opinion. Trundle, Kindred, Master Yi, Viego, Shyvana, Lilia, Gwen, and Brand all tend to be really good into Tank Udyr because they're all high percent burn, very heavy tempo champions, and if they get ahead of you, they will tend to stay ahead of you as a tank. Since you're building resistances, you won't be building damage. They tend to build damage, so their clear speed goes through the roof if they pull ahead of you, and they're highly effective against tank versions of Udyr. Every other champion in the game you can play Tank Udyr into. I do want to stress, we'll get into, of course, itemization here in a second, but Tank Udyr has a 60% win rate at 3 items into pretty much every single champion. It is very hard to counterpick an Udyr. I do want to shout out Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix is a matchup where, I tend to play full AP Udyr into, but you can play tank into him, but it is one of those champions that is more difficult rather than not. But this should be a pretty good blueprint for you as long as you follow it. No issues at all with Tank Udyr. Itemization on Tank Udyr is extremely easy. I actually just released a video on my YouTube if you want to go check it out, where I actually go through and talk about these items in a 20-minute kind of long form video. But here is your cheat sheet to building Tank Udyr on or tank items on Udyr. Right now we're in a drain tank meta, so Spirit Visage and Unending Despair are your best armor and magic resist item, followed shortly by Deadman's Plate and Abyssal Mask. You can build or substitute those in if you're against slow or your team has a lot of magic damage. Abyssal Mask is a team shred, of course. So those are your best armor items. Your first item every single game, no matter what, will be Liandry's. And I do want to take a second, when you're playing Tank Udyr, Mejai's is core and it is required. Try to get a Dark Seal early game. So with magical boots, keep in mind you can't buy brown boots on your first back. Usually what you try and do is you get, I think it's 1250 gold. That gets you Faded Ashes plus Dark Seal, and that is your ideal first back. Then with your Faded Ashes and your Dark Seal, you walk around the map, you farm as much as you can, you try and get free kills. Hopefully, if you get your Dark Seal stacked, by the time you upgrade to Liandry's, you can upgrade to Mejai's right after. And then with Liandry's and Mejai's, you go straight into tank, you completely skip damage items. You put on a Riftmaker, usually 5th or 6th item, but you don't want it until later in the game, but you just build tank, Riftmaker, and you're good to go. Liandry's is always your first item, though. I would encourage you to build it. They are nerfing it. I do think even after the nerfs, it'll be your core item until they significantly change how the Liandry's burn effect works, or they reduce all the high HP targets in the game, which I don't think they're doing either anytime soon. So that's the itemization. Very easy on Tank Udyr. Tank Udyr is the easiest. You can literally just do Liandry's Unending Spirit Visage every single game, and you'll be fine. I'll put some tips here on the back end of the video as well after we get through the first 3 sections, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But I want to take a second here on the back end of this tank playstyle to kind of explain how you play it more from just a general top-down. So Tank Udyr, your mindset is you're trying to soak cooldowns. You max W second. If you don't know, the skill order is you do QWER and then you do R max first, W second, E third, and usually you're going to run out of skill points, so that's just the 1, 2, 3 right there. And the idea is with W max second, building tank, you're going to have a ton of survivability as Udyr, and really what you want to do is you want to press Awaken W more than anything else. So you want to be the engage, you want to open every fight by literally just pressing Awaken W and running into somebody and bear stunning them. That's the ideal way to start a fight is Tank Udyr. The other way you can start a fight, of course, is you can bait and engage, press Awaken W, and then heal back to full. And your whole purpose, I suppose, is you're peeling your carry, whether it's mid or ADC, and you're just trying to soak as much cooldown as possible. Tank Udyr is really good against heavy crowd control team comps, because while they're all clumped on you, crowd controlling you, hopefully you've got W healing and shields going off, and you're also got Unending Despair and Spirit Visage, so you're passively healing while the enemy team is clumped on you, trying to crowd control and kill you. If you've got resistances and healing, oftentimes that will completely turn the tables and make it to where Udyr is unkillable, because the longer the fight goes with Conqueror and tank items, you will just naturally be very, very good. In addition, with Tank Udyr, keep in mind, with that Awakened W going off, you want to be auto-attacking a ton. Since you're tanky, you can actually run into people in auto-attack, so make use of the fact that every time you auto-attack, every time you switch stances, the first 2 auto-attacks will reset your passive cooldown or your Awakening cooldown. That Awakened W, that giant shield, is the backbone of the build, so if you just constantly run into somebody, Awakened W, Bear Stun, RRQQ, WWEERR, your Awakened W will be back up, and then you get 2 giant 1500 health shields that heal you back to full. And then you just quite literally never die because you've got Conqueror healing you, you've got Last Stand going off, you've got healing in your items, and you've got healing in your runes. So keep in mind, when you play this playstyle, you're first and foremost a peeler, but number 2, you're soaking cooldowns. Yes, you can carry. Yes, you can dive on the enemy squishies if they're very, especially if you've got an XP advantage, but your first and foremost thing, what makes this playstyle so oppressive, the reason why people ban Udyr and the reason why this playstyle works the best into the most amount of champions is because no champion can get through Udyr. That's really the plain and simple of it. Unlike champions like Skarner, Udyr actually does a ton of damage. So if the enemy champions mess up and engage, or they try and kill your squishies and they can't seem to get the right angle, if you just put yourself in between your, think of, I used to play basketball and there was an analogy, put yourself between the basketball and the goal at all time, right? When you're on defense, because you don't want the offense to slip around you and get a dunk on you, right? You always want to have yourself between the ball and the basket. Same deal when you're peeling. You want to be between your carry and the enemy anti-carry or the enemy assassin at all times, and you would be surprised at how unkillable you are. So that's the playstyle on Tank Udyr. Of course, on the back end, I'll give you more general tips on how to play Udyr that are applicable to all 3 playstyles, but that's how to play Tank Udyr in a nutshell. Man, I'm so excited to be making Q-Max Tiger builds in 2024. If you guys know anything about me, I played Tiger Udyr back in the day. It was my first thing that really made me fall in love with the game. It's the first thing I hit Challenger on. And yes, Q-Max attack damage Udyr is still very viable. I've got the win rates to show you if you ever want to pop by on stream. But essentially, if you look at aggregated data, Tiger still has a 60% win rate at 3 items across multiple builds. In EU West and North America in ranked solo queue, diamond and above, meaning Tiger is absolutely viable. The reason why we call it the bad, it's a little bit harder than Phoenix, so I don't usually recommend people to start by learning Tiger. I would recommend learn the ropes with Tank Udyr, figure them out, figure out how the awakenings work, figure out how the abilities work. Once you do that, you can start looking at playing Tiger. Let's go through some rune pages. Rune pages are a little bit different on Tiger because you've got a lot of options. You really do. I think in general, though, Precision Tree is your best first tree. I'm going to pull up on screen what I consider your best overall runes. This is PTA, Triumph, Legend Haste with Coup de Grace, Celerity, Water Walking, Attack Speed, Adaptive Force, and Scaling Health. This is going to be your best overall rune page and the one that I recommend to the most amount of Udyr players. If you're doing Stride Breaker builds, Triforce builds, stuff like that, this will be one of the most consistent rune pages you can play. It's great for tempo. Water Walking helps you get to dragons and rift heralds, and of course, fight the enemy jungler in the river. Celerity scales really nice because on Tiger Udyr, and I'm going to say this up front, we max E second, Q first, okay? Q first, E second, W third. We're trying to get the movement speed from our E, and we're trying to get around the map fast, and we're trying to play for tempo. The other option you have, and once again, all these rune plates or all these rune pages are viable. You just kind of need to pick the one that fits your playstyle the best. There is another build. If you guys have been on my YouTube channel, I still spam a lot of experimental hexplate builds. With experimental hexplate, how ultimate haste works on Udyr is it applies towards your passive. So if you take Ultimate Hunter and build Experimental Hexplate, you've got 60 Ultimate Haste, which means you get a ton of Lightning Qs. Usually when I do my Hexplate builds or my Spear of Shojin builds, I tend to prefer Conqueror because you're a little bit higher health pool, more DPS. This is the rune page I tend to take is Conqueror, Triumph, Haste, cut down with Eyeball and the Ultimate Hunter there. Another build you have, if you don't want to go Hexplate and you're like, Willie, I prefer Lethality and I prefer Snowballing, but I still kind of want to get that kick, that Domination Tree and the extra damage and utility that Hexplate gives. If you want to go Ghostblade, Ravenous Hydra, Profane Hydra, builds like that, I would recommend PTA, Triumph, Legend Alacrity, Coup de Grace with Treasure Hunter in Eyeball Collection. Very similar. You're actually going to go double Adaptive Force instead of attack speed as well. This is better if you want to play more Ghostblade one-shot builds, and this will give you the highest snowball carry potential in my opinion. No, it doesn't scale as well. No, it's not my preferred way to play Tiger, but I do think it is still a very good rune page. And then if you're a split pusher, I actually coached somebody yesterday. You guys will probably see that on YouTube here in a bit. But I told him, listen, if you identify as a split pusher and you love building Hullbreaker and you find yourself in side lanes often, Demolish and Overgrowth are incredible on Udyr, because with Overgrowth, all the Rift Grubs, if you don't know, the little Rift Grubs that spawn on the 3 big Rift Grubs, those all count towards Overgrowth. So if you take Demolish and Overgrowth, you'll have a high health pool, so you can outduel tanks and top laners. And then, of course, that really nice Demolish proc, so you can get those 700 gold inner turrets and get that snowball going even harder. So these are the 4 rune pages I tend to play with on Tiger Udyr. All 4 of them work. It really just depends on what you as a player think you do the best. Take the rune page that fits that playstyle the most, I would say. For Tiger QMax matchup guides, you've got a few things here that I want you to consider. And also in the top right, by the way, you don't have to build AP tank, but I would say in general, you should flex into Phoenix against these type of champions. Tiger is very straightforward. If you can auto-attack champions, if they've got low crowd control or crowd control that you can easily play around, Tiger Udyr will be fantastic. Things like Kindred, Evelynn, even though I don't like these champions, Tiger Udyr is very, very good because you can run in and one-shot them. The type of champions that are very hard for Tiger Udyr are champions like Gragas and Jax, because they kite you out and they've got Counter-Strike. Kha'Zix, you can't really auto-attack because he goes invisible. Wukong goes invisible. Shaco goes invisible. Rammus is too tanky. Skarner is too tanky, he has too much crowd control. Volibear's got too much heal and sustain. Same with Zac. It takes forever to kill him. Warwick can 1v1 you. Poppy is too slippery. Pantheon's annoying. Nunu has way too many slows in his kit. Nocturne can actually outduel you in early stages of the game. For these type of champions, I usually tell people whether it's full AP or tank Udyr, you should probably be considering playing Phoenix. Against everybody else, Tiger is green light to fly. You are cleared for takeoff. Tiger, there are certain matchups, I want to, like, for instance, looking at Elise. Elise is kind of tricky for QMax Udyr, but if you either Awaken E, her Cocoon, which, of course, blocks incoming crowd control effects, or if you just flash the Cocoon, she's no issues. So I do encourage people, if you like Tiger Udyr, these champions on the left, you can still absolutely play Tiger Udyr into most times. Even champions like Talon that go invisible, he's not invisible most of the time, and his invisibility is only 2 seconds or whatever. So there are still certain champions that seem hard, but you can still get away with QMax Udyr. All right, itemization on Tiger is forever and always going to be one of the hardest things to talk about, because Tiger Udyr has one of the most versatile options when it comes to itemization. You're playing a bruiser, tank, AP champion. Not only can you build attack damage items, but you can also build Rage Blade. You can build hybrid items. You have so many options. So before I go into this section, I'm going to tell you guys the best thing that you can do as a player is start to think critically about itemization and stop thinking about, oh, Willie said build this and this and we'll win the game. Udyr is so versatile. Playing into his versatility will improve your win rate. So, with that being said, huge caveat, my preferred build right now is still Experimental Hexblade into Spear of Shojin. I've talked about this a lot, but Ultimate Haste applies towards your passive on Udyr. So if you build Experimental Hexblade and you take Ultimate Hunter from the Domination tree, you get a ton of Awakenings. Yes, it's still my preferred first item. It also gives you a movement speed steroid. It's also bugged, meaning it goes off every 30 seconds, regardless of whether you use Awakening and regardless of whether or not you want to get that extra attack speed or movement speed buff, it goes off. So it's a tempo item as well. My second preferred item in games where I'm ahead or even is Spear of Shojin. Fantastic 2-item combo. It gives you basic haste cooldown and ultimate haste cooldown. Basic haste from the Shojin. Put the two together. I call it peanut butter and jelly. I still think it's the backbone of every Tiger Udyr build that I am currently doing right now. Those 2 items are in my full build every single time. Now, if you guys really don't like the Hexblade, I completely understand. It's kind of an acquired taste. You got to kind of play with it a few games to get used to it. You can still do Triforce. Another 57% 2-item combo, 58% win rate 2-item combo is Triforce into Black Cleaver or Triforce into Blade of the Ruined King. If you're an old school Tiger Udyr player, or maybe you're an old school Jax player and you prefer Triforce builds, stuff like that, Triforce into Blade of the Ruined King or Triforce into Black Cleaver, depending on the team comp, is still a very, very high win rate build that you can can do 1 item and 2 item. That being said, those are the only 2 options at point of video that I am going to recommend to you guys, is either Hexplate into Shojin with that Domination Rune Tree setup we talked about, or Triforce into Black Cleaver, or Triforce into Blade of the Ruined King. Let's talk 3rd item onwards. 3rd item onwards is always flex. There are 2 really big things you need to have as Tiger Udyr in your build, though, that I want you to be aware of. First things first, with those 2 items that I have recommended to you, you'll have plenty of health. Maybe not so much on Triforce, Blade of the Ruined King, but every other build you'll be fine. You need Armor Pin and Resistances for the champions that are the hardest for you to deal with, right? So I usually tell people Death Dance and Maw are probably your 3rd best item. Not always. You can go Dead Man's Plate, you can go Sterex, but Death Dance and Maw tend to be what I build 3rd item most games, regardless of what my first 2 items are. And then 4th item is going to be an Armor Pin item. If I need Anti-Heal and Armor Pin, I'll go Mortal Reminder. If I just need Armor Pin, I tend to go Black Cleaver because it's a team amp and it's really, really good with the high health pool. Last item, I tend to either go Overlord's Bloodmail or Sterex Gauge, depending if I need the tenacity, or I just want the Overlord Bloodmail for the giant attack damage. But that's kind of the full build, guys. It's either Triforce or Black Cleaver, Triforce Blade of the Ruined King, or Experimental Hexplate Shojin. You go a resistance item 3rd, resistance damage item. Don't go a tank item. Go either Death Dance or Maul. You're going to want to build more damage. Get some sort of Armor Pin item 4th. So whether that's Black Cleaver, Mortal Reminder, you can go Terminus. Any sort of Armor Pin item will work really well. And then last item for me right now is either Sterex or Overlord's Bloodmail. A lot of people in other guides that I've actually made matchup specific guides. Really and truthfully, it's not really hard right now to play Tiger Udyr in terms of itemization. I don't think I need to make different, build Stridebreaker into Maw, use your brain. It's either Triforce or Black Cleaver, depending on what you prefer, or Hexblade into Shojin, into a resistance item that you need, depending on the type of boots you go as well, because keep in mind you've got boots, whether it be Swifties. By the way, Swifties are my favorite boots, in case you're wondering right now. But Armored Boots and Merc Treads, and then we get Armor Pin, and then we either get Sterex or Overlord's last item, depending on the game. Keep in mind Sterex has tenacity. Once again, if they've got a lot of crowd control, Sterex will outperform Overlord's Bloodmail, in my opinion, final item. So that's that. The final thing I will say on itemization, if you guys want a really fun build, why not just do both? Put Hexplate into Shojin into Triforce. That's probably, it's very expensive, but it's very good at low elo. If you kind of want the best of both worlds, try that build. I would not recommend people above Diamond to play that consistently. It's too expensive. But people Diamond and below, those 3 items will allow you to get the best of both worlds, where you don't have to say, I want to build this or I want to build this. Try both, see what you like, and then as you continue to play and practice Udyr, you can naturally begin to just build the ones you like without having to listen to me. So I would encourage you guys, though, any of these Tiger builds will work very well. All of them are 60% win rates as long as you follow that formula. With Tiger Udyr playstyle, it's very, very simple. You've either got 1 of 2 options. You're either playing the best anti-peel carry in the game because you can one-shot any melee that tries to engage, or you can go split push. Split pushing is very, very good on Tiger Udyr, specifically Qmax Udyr. If you guys watch Truth to G or remember any of his old videos, Qmax Udyr is the closest thing you have to split push Udyr, in my opinion. If you put a Hull Breaker in your build, that's another incredible flex item you can put in there as well. That will allow you to walk down a sideline and duel most top laners. There are very few top laners in the game you will lose to as Qmax Udyr. Off the top of my head, Set and Jax tend to be the hardest for me just because they can actually crowd control you and lock you down. But outside of Set and Jax, maybe a Fiora if she gets ahead and you bear stun her during parry or something. But those are the only champions I worry about from a split push scenario. Of course, you've also got mages. Mages have a lot of wave control or wave clear and can crowd control you usually at the same time. So mages tend to be tricky if they have mages or champions that can stop your split push. I tend to prefer to just flex in a team fighting. But either way, especially if you go Hexblade, but even if you don't, your job is to wait for those awakening cooldown to come off and use your lightning Q on whoever is out of position. Whether that's the support, the top, the jungle, the carry, it doesn't matter. Just keep putting lightning Qs on people that get isolated out of position. If you get 2 or 3 lightning Qs off over the course of a team fight, you will guaranteed win. Especially with Tiger Udyr, you want to keep using your attack speed to recycle your passive cooldown. With Tiger Udyr in particular, you happen to have a lot of attack speed for farming. Another thing I want to mention with Qmax Udyr is you can actually solo Baron. So past 20 minutes, you can look to do that as well. Another thing that I do want to encourage players to think about, Tiger Udyr is no longer an early game champion. I mentioned it at the front of the video. I'm going to mention it here. Tiger Udyr is no longer a pre-15 minute champion. He is a post-15 minutes champion. So don't be afraid to concede early fights, early dragons, early rift grubs, early rift heralds if it means you stay alive and you keep your tempo. If you can make it to 3 items, literally you have a 60% win rate on multiple Tiger builds right now. You just have to make it to 3 items. Farm is still the backbone of this build. I still do Raptor starts on Tiger. I still farm a lot, and I still choose, to take things a little bit slower. But I do want to stress that as Tiger Udyr, really 2 options with playstyle. Peel the ADC or go split push, depending on the game state and what you prefer. I got a buddy of mine, Legend120, those that hang out in the YouTube on Twitch, and we talk about this. Nobody plays full AP Udyr. I do not know why. Full AP Udyr is one of the most broken champions in the game. He does more damage than Brand. It's at range. It scales better than everything. And frankly, the early game is a little tougher. The mid game is a little tougher. Past 25 minutes, though, full AP Udyr is the scariest thing in the game to play against, because you can never get near him. If you don't know how Udyr works, all of your kit scales with % damage. The difference between Qmax and Rmax is obviously Rmax is a circle. So what happens if you build full damage and put it on the circle that has a 13-second cooldown late game, and it also happens to do 50% max health damage, 450 damage per pulse, and a Liandry's burn, and you've got Shadow Flame critting when they're low on health, and you built flat magic pin, which is the equivalent of lethality, but for magic damage? What happens if you do that? And the answer is you are the best 1v5 champion in solo queue. I'm going to say it. A lot of people ask me, what do you recommend for low elo? I recommend whatever you guys have fun with. Udyr is a 60% win rate champion at 3 items on Tank, Tiger, and Phoenix. If you're asking me, though, if I don't know I can rely on teammates, full AP Udyr is the best way to carry solo queue. It really is. I cannot tell you how many games I have 1v5'd. I've come out and done 80, 90,000, 100,000 damage just by picking up full damage on Udyr and letting the kit do the work. It is very, very fun. It's very similar to Fiddlesticks. The build, we'll get into all that in a bit, but just the mindset you have is the most important thing. I kind of want to just mention, we're going to go through items, build, rune, just like we did with the other 2 playstyles, but you're playing Fiddlesticks. Please just continue to farm. Please just show up when your Awakening's off cooldown, and then pick up free kills, get a Dark Seal stack, get a Magi stack, go back to your jungle, and just play super safe and wait for that Awakening to come back up. It's a Dark Harvest playstyle. We'll get into this in a second, but you're ramping, okay? This is the hardest scaling version of Udyr. It is the best carry version of Udyr. It is the hardest to play in the early game, because if you die early game or mid game, and you feed 2 or 3 times, and you don't get Dark Harvest stacks, and you don't get a Dark Seal stacked, it's going to be hard. It's going to be really hard to win the game. I recommend people to play Tank first, and then Tiger, and then full AP in that order, because once you learn how to position with Tiger, full AP will become a lot easier. It will be a very hard adjustment trying to go from full tank to full AP, because in my opinion, it's just going to be a completely different play styles. You're going to be used to being tanky, and you're going to tell me full AP is really bad, and I'm going to tell you, no, it's not. You just haven't learned the play style yet. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump onto runes and all that good stuff here. All right, for runes, this is a Dark Harvest setup. We're taking Dark Harvest and Gathering Storm. You can do quite a few setups if you want. In my opinion, this is the hardest scaling setup in the game, though. I would encourage you guys, please just consider the Dark Harvest Gathering Storm. The reason why is we're not trying to really, yes, we're strong. Yes, we're still Udyr in the early game, and that's why this build works, is you're still Udyr pre-20 minutes, and you can still kind of frontline just because nobody in the game is tanky yet. Past 20 minutes, once champions get tanky, you're going to be really squishy the way that we'll itemize. We'll get into that here in a second. Dark Harvest and Gathering Storm are going to reward your game plan and your playstyle the most with this playstyle, because we're just trying to ramp. We're not trying to blow out the early game. I mean, that would be nice. It'd be nice to snowball. It would be nice to be extremely fed, but that doesn't happen every game. So we take Dark Harvest and Gathering Storm to make sure once we get to 25 minutes and 30-minute fights, we're strong enough with our base runes to where we've got enough damage. Even if we are behind, our runes will be strong enough at that point to kind of carry us and allow us to start picking up the kills with all the Awaken R's. For itemization on AP Udyr, there are a couple different ways you can go, and the biggest question you need to ask yourself is, am I building Liandry's or not this game, okay? Liandry's, if you don't know, is a backbone on most AP and tank playstyles, but in my opinion, when you're playing full AP Udyr, Liandry's is actually what it's designed to be. It's an anti-tank item. I don't build Liandry's every game on full AP Udyr, but if they have a lot of frontline, if they have a lot of melees, if they have a lot of high health targets, Liandry's is one of the best items you can buy. So I would say, if you know you're going to build Liandry's, if the enemy team has a lot of high health targets, then go ahead and build Liandry's first. Liandry's is still going to be, it's just like Tank Udyr, build Faded Ashes, upgrade to Liandry's where you can, get a Dark Seal, get your boots where you can, good to go, right? If you don't need Liandry's, I actually think your first purchase is Sorcerer Boots plus Dark Seal first back. So try and get 1,450 gold. That gets you Sorc Boots plus Dark Seal. And then you're building Storm Surge first, into Shadow Flame second, into Death Cap. That's going to be your 1, 2, 3 Storm Surge, Shadow Flame, Death Cap. If you do Liandry's, I think it's Liandry's, Shadow Flame, Death Cap. That's going to be your 1, 2, 3 there. Now, if you do need utility, one thing I want to mention is not every game do I build Shadow Flame second. If the enemy team has a dive team comp, think of Jarvan, Viego, Kha'Zix, Yone, champions like that, I actually build Zhonya second. Not only does that give me armor to cut off lethality, but it also gives you the incredible 2.5 stasis effect to where you go invulnerable and you completely stop dive team comps from being able to kill you. Very similar to the reason why Fiddlesticks builds Zhonyas pretty much every single game. If you don't need Zhonyas, if they don't have a dive comp, Malignance is another really good utility option you can put second. Malignance works for the same reason Experimental Hexplate works on Qmax. Ultimate Haste applies towards your passive. Guess what? As Udyr players, we have agency to pick which ability that passive gets applied towards, so we can apply it towards our R cooldown, which is great. So Malignance is really, really good if you just want more cooldown. Very cheap item, 85 ability power, and it reduces more magic resist with the AoE burn, which is really, really good. I would say after that, probably your next best bet is almost always Death Cap third item. Regardless of what you pick second item, it's going to be Death Cap third item. And then I would say fourth and fifth item, you're either going to want Void Staff into Abyssal Mask, or you're going to want Void Staff into another Magic Pen item, just depending. If they're squishy, you know, the more ADCs, the more low health targets they have, the better. Shadow Flame and Storm Surge and Sorc Boots work together. If they are high health targets, I tend to just go for the Void Staff into more damage, like, you know, Abyssal Mask is really, really good. If you can't build both, I think you can't build both Void Staff and Abyssal. Usually what I'll do at that point is I'll just get the Malignance last item. Anything that just helps me kill tanks is what I'm looking for, usually if I'm not going straight into Magic Pen. My standard full build is Storm Surge, Shadow Flame, Death Cap, Void Staff into, you know, Malignance or Zhonyas, depending on what I want last item there. So that is the full build. I do want to stress with full AP Udyr, do not build tank items. Okay, you're going to be very tempted at many points in the game to build tank items. You will not scale, and this build will not work if you build a tank item. If you want to play tank, just go Conquer and play Phoenix Tank. It's a completely different play style. I give people the analogy of lanes on a highway. Stick in your lane. If you're playing AP Udyr, do not, you know, merge into the left or right lane. Stay in your lane. Even when you're behind, continue to build damage, because I promise past 20 minutes, even if you're behind, those Awaken R's will start hitting like trucks, and you'd be surprised how many games you can get an 1,000 gold bounty out of nowhere, because even the enemy team doesn't expect the 0-3 Udyr to start one-shotting them past 20 minutes. It's exactly what happened. So please, in terms of itemization, always build damage. Do not flex into tank on this playstyle. You know, I was actually just looking it over and I realized I needed to make a matchup guide section for AP Udyr, and then I realized here's the bottom line. You can play AP Udyr into 100% of team comps. It's a high risk, high reward playstyle into every single team comp. I can tell you that AP Udyr is not good into Viego and Master Yi, but here's the bottom line. If you build a Zhonya's, AP Udyr is really good into Viego and Master Yi. If you just itemize correctly and you think about the team comps you're against, I'm actually just going to give you the green right to fly. If you want to play full AP Udyr, it is the hardest playstyle, but it can be played against 100% of team comps because it's such a forgiving playstyle. It's a giant Awaken R that tracks people. It's good against melees and ranged. It's good for team fighting. It's good for split pushing. It's good for dueling because your Lightning Q, if you don't know, on this playstyle has one, even with 1 point in Q, you will still one-shot people as full AP Udyr. So I'm going to tell you, you can play AP Udyr into every single team fight or team comp out there, and I really don't see any issues. If you're against dive team comps, just make sure to get Zhonya's second item, like Viego, Jarvan, stuff like that. But it's really one of the most... It's like Phoenix Tank, except unlike Phoenix Tank, you can actually kill the champions that kill you late game, like Gwen, for instance. You out-duel Gwen late game as AP Udyr. So, I'm just going to tell you, play it into everything. Play style is extremely important on AP Udyr. I tell people all forms of Udyr scale, okay? Tiger, Phoenix, all of them, they all scale. This is the hardest scaling version of Udyr, so think of yourself as Kassadin, literally. You're playing like Kassadin. You're just trying to scale, get to 2 or 3 items, and then you're looking to team fight and get people on Awaken R. Specifically, even if they have a split pusher, you can stop split push with this playstyle extremely easily because you just Awaken R the minion waves. They can't take towers if the minion waves are dead, right? So just get comfortable and used to using your Awaken R as not only a disengage tool, but a bait tool. You want to use it to clear off minion waves against the type of champions you can't split push against. And then outside of that, I would say the biggest thing you can do on this playstyle is just make sure don't die, okay? Not dying, you can die on Tiger and you can die on Tank, and you can oftentimes recover. If you die on full AP Udyr, it's going to be extremely difficult. Please play on your back foot. I give the analogy of boxers on the ropes. You're just on the ropes waiting for the enemy team to swing, and then you want to hit them with an uppercut with the Awaken R. Save your Awakening cooldown, wait for them to mess up, and then use your Awaken R to completely devastate them in the moments where you can in the early game. Past 25 minutes, so fun fact, at level 11 and 16 respectively, your cooldown on your Awakening goes down. So once you make it to level 11 and level 16, you can start using your Awaken R for poke. Your Awaken R, you really do need to play it to see it. It does so much damage. You should be not afraid to use your Awaken R, especially past level 16, to just poke down the enemy front line. Okay, you press Awaken R once or twice, their front line is going to be 10% health, and they can't run out of it because it's a 35% slow that burns them down, and you're putting Leandra's effect on them. Past 20-25 minutes, you're going to be poking them, and then especially with Zhonya's, if you put Zhonya's in the build, look to flash one shot, flash Awaken R. It's just like Fiddlesticks. Imagine Fiddlesticks, you're playing Fiddlesticks. Awaken R, double R, flash on people, try and get giant AoE ults. You can hard carry solo queue. Like, I just have memories upon memories running through my brain of fights that I know we should have lost, but Awaken R turned them. Awaken R truly is one of the most broken abilities in the game. Phoenix Udyr loves it. The reason why Tank Meta Udyr is, or Tank Udyr is the meta, is because it uses Awaken R. What happens if you as a player decide you're going to take it a step further, learn how to carry your awful solo queue teammates? You're not just going to be an average Udyr player that just plays tank, but you're going to take it a step further, put damage on the good ability that Tank Udyrs play. I mean, I've got 80% win rate accounts out the wazoo right now. I've got a 90% win rate account right now in low elo. You can truly carry 9 games out of 10 if you get good at it, and it's extremely rewarding and fun. So that's the play style on Phoenix Udyr. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to transition into more general tips for Udyr that are applicable to all 3 play styles. Obviously, I very quickly went through the play style for Tiger, Phoenix, and Tank. Now I'm going to talk about how to use your Awakenings moments across all 3 play styles that you can take advantage of Udyr's kit. General tips on Udyr. This is an important section because regardless of which playstyle you pick on Udyr, there are things that you want to do across all forms of Udyr. Once again, when it comes down to pathing, gameplay, actually using the champion, that's something I don't really want to talk about in this video because as you play Udyr, you as a player will naturally get better at that. One thing that I will say is I'm quickly going to go through the Awakenings. Lightning Q on all forms of Udyr, even if you only have 1 point in Q, is the best ability to use on isolated targets, okay? Most Udyr players know this. The lightning bolts will bounce to minions and other jungle camps and Rift Herald. So if they are around literally anything, it's not like Kha'Zix where it's champion isolation. If they're around anything, the lightning bolts won't be isolated. So as you look to start dueling champions, Lightning Q will be one of your best abilities if they are isolated. Waken W, I tell people, especially in the early game, if you have the numbers advantage or if you are the person that is soaking the cooldowns, if the enemy team is focusing you, use Awaken W in the early game. How many times have you been in River, the enemy jungler's half health fighting you, the enemy mid laner's half health fighting you, you're full health, so you've got a health advantage, and you don't know which Awakening to use? Do you go for the Awaken R on the clumped targets? Do you use the Lightning Q to try and one-shot somebody first? The answer is Awaken W. Just use Awaken W, wait for your mid laner to show up. If they're going to 2v1 focus you, if you Awaken W, they will never kill you because you've got a higher health pool and you're soaking the cooldowns. Eventually your mid laner will show up and you'll win. That is extremely important, especially my tank Udyr players. You should be using Awaken W 99% of the time. Seriously, do not use Awaken Q or Awaken R unless you know you can finish somebody off. Just use Awaken W and let the team show up. That's the backbone of tank Udyr, and especially even Phoenix and Tiger Udyr in the early game. Use Awaken W if you have either the numbers advantage, so let's say it's a 3v1 scenario and the enemy jungler is focusing you, use Awaken W there, or if you've got the health advantage and you're going to be the one soaking the cooldowns. Awaken E is honestly a giant waste of an awakening. You should only use it in two scenarios. Number one, if you're playing Tiger Udyr and you want the Hexplate build and you've got very low awakening cooldown, you can use it to bait crowd control effects. You can also use it when you're ganking to get around things like Lux Snare and Morgana Q. Now, here's the issue. If you use Awaken E, you have no damage. I tell most people learning Udyr, do not use Awaken E unless you know for a fact that there's no back-end drama that's about to happen. So, like, if you're forcing a gank and you don't know where the enemy jungle is, do not use Awaken E to force the gank, because if you use Awaken E, even if you go through a Lux Snare, you're going to stun them, and then you're going to have no Awakening, no W, no Q, no R, nothing to actually follow up. So, Awaken E really is a win more ability. You should only use it in positions where you are winning or ahead and you know for a fact it's about to turn into more gold if you use it, and there's no risk of you dying on the back end. Awaken R, once again, is the most broken ability on Udyr's kit. It really is. Awaken W is insane. You should be spamming it, tank Udyr players, but Awaken R is where a lot of that AoE team fight damage comes from. On full AP Udyr, use exclusively Awaken R. If you're playing Tiger Udyr, you should only use it when farming. And if you're playing tank Udyr, in my opinion, just Awaken W. But Awaken R can be used in the moments where your team needs AoE peel or AoE damage and you're already winning. In general, though, Awaken R is best used on full AP playstyles or in moments where you know for a fact that you need an AoE slow or an AoE disengage or something like that. I would not encourage anybody except those playing full AP Udyr to just use it just cuz. Awaken W will actually outperform Awaken R in most fights. Outside of that, other general tips that I usually tell Udyr player, always make sure to do your 2 auto attacks when you switch stance, even on bear stun. If you're bear stunning a target, auto attack them twice in bear stun. It feels clunky, yeah, they're stunned, but it will lower that cooldown, especially on tank versions of Udyr. It is extremely important. Other things with Udyr is split push is viable in all 3 playstyles. Tank is not really good at split pushing, but AP and Tiger both can split push. Always keep in mind at any point in the game, even on AP playstyles, you can just build a hole breaker and go split push if your team is truly awful and you can't team fight. Don't be afraid to split push on Udyr. Another thing I'm going to mention specific to Season 14, specifically after patch 14.19, very big patch at the game in patch 14.19. I encourage most Udyr players to stack dragons, not Rift Grubs now. I used to be a huge Rift Grub player. I do think you should go for Rift Grubs. Obviously, get Rift Grubs if they're free and you can get them and you're in an opportunity to take them. However, I don't force them anymore. I will force a dragon or two because if you dragon stack in this high health, long duration meta, games are just long now. The longer games go, the more valuable dragons become, the better it is. And then final thing, always remember, with Udyr, you are a late game champion, okay? I've got tons of guides, tons of gameplay videos. Once again, if you need help with that stuff, that will come with time. Don't be afraid to pick him. Don't be afraid to watch, me or anybody else on YouTube or Twitch if you just want to learn how to play him. But he's a 60% win rate champion at 3 items pretty much on every single build. get to late game, be patient. Don't try and just force silly fights in the early game. Farm. Your CS really is important because you're just trying to get to those 3 items, right? If you make it to 3 items, I tell people oftentimes 6 times out of 10, you're not going to lose the game, and it's going to be very hard for you to mess it up. All right, 8 CS per minute is your target. If you go to your OPGG and you don't see 8 CS per minute or more on the majority of your games, you need to be farming more. Most low elo players, that's their biggest issue, is they don't farm enough and they spend too much time going for ganks, trying to use the broken kit, where if you just farm, you're going to be even more broken at 3 items. Don't be afraid just because you get a 1 item and 2 item spike to keep farming your jungle, because you truly do scale. And then the other thing finally is every level up on Udyr gives your Awakenings extra damage. So once again, Udyr's a late game champion, but just always remember, just by leveling up, you're going to do more damage relative to other champions in the game, just because Udyr scales that well. So all your damage is percent based. Always make sure to get either Magic Pin or Armor Pin in your builds. Even if you're playing tank Udyr, I recommend most tank Udyrs to get Abyssal Mask. Last item, just get some sort of Magic Pin or Magic Shred in your build, or Armor Shred if you're playing Tiger AD Udyr. But it is important because with Udyr's kit, you have so much percent damage in your kit that Armor Shred and Magic Pin are the only 2 things you're missing. And if you put those in the pit, you're good to go. Final thing I'm going to say, have fun. These are my recommendations for Udyr, but you can really, there are so many ways you can play Udyr. Have fun with Udyr. Pick the playstyle you like the most, whether it is tank. I don't like tank. I don't tend to play tank. You don't see much tank content on my stream or YouTube, but that doesn't mean it's not fun for somebody. If that's fun to you, spam the hell out of it, or spam the heck out of it, rather, and you can really climb to Challenger on all 3 playstyles. Right now, there are all 3 playstyles in Challenger around the world. Udyr, it is a golden age to be an Udyr player. You should be either picking or banning this champion, in my opinion. He is very, very strong, very good, very versatile, and good into 90% of team comps. Thank you guys so much. If you did find this information useful or this guide useful, make sure to head to my Twitch, subscribe to the YouTube. We are a growing streamer. I like to tell people this video, quite literally, I started making it top of the morning, and it's already about to be end of the day. So I've spent all day editing this, getting this ready for you guys. If you found it useful, I would just ask, consider going to the Twitch and dropping a sub. Even at $5 a month, I make half of that, $2.50 a month. That will be more than enough to say for me to tell you thank you, not the other way around. Because as someone who does want to be a full-time streamer someday, hey, we got to grow that dream somehow, right? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll be back. And, of course, I appreciate each and every one of you tuning in and all that good stuff. Make sure, like always, if you have any comments or questions, please leave them in the comment section. I try and keep up with my comments. Even if I don't respond, I try and read all of them, and I process that feedback to try and make the next video better and all that good stuff. But that is the end-all, be-all for Udyr. Hope you enjoyed. Now go get some LP and skyrocket that win rate for me. Bye!
Dang! Call me so I can make it juicy for ya.